Welcome, everybody, to our inaugural session on the future of insurance industry influencers. I'm really pleased today to have Mike Connor, the CEO of Silicon Valley Insurance Accelerator, or SVIA, as we all lovingly call it, to join me today on this inaugural series of industry influencers. So I'd like to introduce Mike. Mike, welcome to this inaugural series, and I'd really like to have you give a little bit of background about SVIA and yourself, because as you and I have gotten to know each other over the last 4 years, you have a really unique background, and it kind of influences why you got involved into InsurTech that I'd like you to share with the audience.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Denise. I'm so glad to be here, and it's a pleasure to work with you as always. So I'm glad to be here. So just a bit of background about SVIA. SVIA is a member-based insurance innovation organization. Majesco and Denise have been part of us almost since the very inception, and Denise is also one of our principal advisors. So glad to be here for that. So our job at SVIA is really to accelerate innovation in the insurance industry. So we're not a typical insurance incubator where we bring in a bunch of startups. We really literally work with pretty much every member of the insurance and insurance innovation community, from startups to carriers to organizations like Denise. And investors. Our membership program basically is designed to bring that community together through public and private events to accelerate their ability to discover, connect, and create new ideas, relationships, and resources that drive solutions that define basically a customer-centric digital generation of the industry. So just a kind of a catch up on what's coming up on our agenda. Next week, we're launching an insurance consortium, innovation consortium. Denise will be part of that, and that'll be hosted by CSAA's Avanta venture group in Mountain View, California. The objective of that is to really take on the very topic we're talking about, which is what does a digital generation of this industry look like, and what's the business paradigms in which that's going to operate. So basically, that innovation consortium is designed to take that work on, start to lay out the framework for that, as well as start to build out some of the initial POCs and other stuff that will enable that to come to life. So we'll kick off 3 working groups: life, wealth, and wellness, small commercial insurance, and then we just had the Insurance Information Institute join us, and they want to kick off an extreme weather group to really get proactive in the industry about dealing with the issues that those events are causing and the impact they're having on our customers in the industry. So that's a little bit about SVIA. You can find us on the web, and there's more information up there about us. About me, and Denise is right, I have a kind of an interesting background. I started one of the first computer stores in the United States, and I did that in the back of a garment manufacturing plant in El Paso, Texas. We started a computer club there. And my first exposure to insurance was working with some of our members to develop some pretty interesting applications. One was an in-hole pressure sensor that would detect and protect oil rigs from the catastrophic damages that can be caused when thousands of feet of drill pipe are blown back up to the well when they encounter a high pressure pocket. So with that, we could reduce the cost of insurance on those platforms. And the other was working with a team of Army researchers and physicians to develop a non-invasive technique to detect and measure blood flow through the heart. And really kind of get prescriptive about medicine in a way that would help reduce insurance costs and so on. Both of those used the early Apple product and the game paddle imports on it to convert that analog signal into digital signals that we could monitor and measure. We've been doing that for a while, and I got a call one day from Apple that said, you're selling more apples per capita than anybody else in the United States. And I didn't know that. But they flew me out to California to talk with me about what I was doing, why I was doing it, and how I was doing it. And then that ended with a job offer that I couldn't refuse. So I became employee 72 at Apple, and then started by managing their distribution channels, and then managed to piss Steve Jobs off, which is not hard to do. And as a result, went to work for him as a product manager. So that was an exciting period of my life. My last company before starting SVIA was a company called Spatial Key, and that's a cloud and SaaS-based geospatial data visualization and analysis solution. I know it's a mouthful, but basically is used by insurance companies now to look at aggregate risk and a lot of other things, but use geospatial data to do that. And it was in doing that work that I became really clear on how far behind the rest of the world the insurance industry was in terms of adopting and using technology. And so I got excited about what we could do. Well, I went off to do some other things, and then my co-founder, Natalie Wood, had been working for another innovation group here in Silicon Valley. And what they were seeing is this rise in the insurance carriers making the pilgrimage out here. Natalie learned about me through a friend, asked me if I could help them put together a conference series on digital generation insurance. So we did that, and we kicked the first one of those off called Insurance Disrupted in 2015. We did several of those under the Insurance Disrupted banner, and Denise was actually one of our first speakers and supporters as we got that effort started. So the net is, after we did that, we saw the impact and the value of bringing the community together to have those discussions and to meet each other, and decided to launch SVIA and continue and accelerate that work. So that's my background, and that's how I got involved with insurance.
So, we've been working together, Mike, over the last 4 years, from really the very inception of when InsurTech became a topic in the industry, branching off from FinTech. And a lot has changed over the last 4 years, and yet a lot hasn't changed at the same time. Kind of, what do you see the impact of InsurTech that's been really positive on insurance over these last 4 years? And how do you see it kind of continuing forward as you're working in SVIA and you're involved in the whole InsurTech kind of community?
Sure. So, as you know, the impact's been huge. I mean, when we first started, and I can remember some conversations you and I had with some of the insurers who were really skeptical, if not even dismissive, about these brash new startups and emerging technologies that we're using. Back then, I don't think we even called it InsurTech yet. And they were also equally dismissive about the cloud. They were being told by their internal teams and existing vendors they could do all those things internally. They didn't need those stupid InsurTechs, and they probably weren't going to accomplish much anyhow. And it was very clear they felt like they were much too big to have to worry about these little companies. As you know, that's completely changed today. Insurers at first began to see what the impact of those insurers were going to be and understand the impact that would have on their market. And they also began to realize deeply that they didn't have the culture, the vision, or skills to develop those new products and capabilities like the InsurTechs did, and that scared the hell out of them. In the past 2 years, what we've seen is a dramatic change in that, where now we're seeing investments, acquisitions, and partnerships growing between insurers and InsurTechs. And that's not everybody in the market, that's the leaders, and woe be it unto those that don't get on that bandwagon. But we've also seen innovative companies like Majesco move their architecture and strategy to become a platform that makes it easier for carriers to leverage all that innovation, emerging tech, and InsurTechs, and essentially taking a lot of the work off the back of the carriers. Our belief is, as these things start to come together, what we're going to see is a dramatic shift forward in the innovation that takes place in the industry, and the depth and the breadth of how that impacts not just the front end and the customer engagement and the products, but also the back end. So what we see today is, the insurers who get it are basically leveraging the innovation and capabilities of the InsurTechs throughout their entire value chain, all the way from customer engagement to underwriting to policy management and claims. And they're also incorporating a lot of new data sets and analytics and machine learning that will be brought into the market across that value chain. And those are actually enabling them to create products that they could never have created or fielded before. And so, as Denise is fond of saying, the party's just started and it's only getting better. So that's what I think the impact is.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? One of the things that you and I have talked about over the last 4 years, and that we both had a very similar kind of view about InsurTech, is that they were really going to bring to the table some innovative new ways of thinking about insurance, how we might be able to leverage them as partners, to your point about partnerships, but also introduce some of the concepts of different types of technologies. And so what we've seen over particularly the last couple of years, where we started talking about it from a Majesco standpoint with Manish and I out at your event, and you and I in particular were talking about it, was really this concept about ecosystems and next-gen technology that's API-enabled, it's microservices. To your point, it's got advanced analytics, so it's got machine learning and AI. It's got using new data sources. And it's really allowing a different kind of technology that's going to allow for speed and scale and what we like to call speed to value. How do you see that evolving here from the last couple of years and moving forward? Because I think what we're seeing is a new shift, a new paradigm shift at the types of technology that's going to be needed for insurance companies.
Yeah, totally agree. And so to me, those are the future of insurance. I think the net is if you're not moving into those environments and not anticipating those or building those, you're going to get left behind in the dust. And I think, I just want to step outside of insurance for a second. Digital ecosystems are growing and maturing rapidly all around us. The homes we live in, the buildings we work in, transportation systems we use, communities and cities we live in, the healthcare systems that support us, and the industries that we're a part of. The platforms and services that form those today are cloud, SaaS, and increasingly microservices based. To me, those are the innovator's toolkit. That's that's our laboratory. Those are all superchargers that are fueled by emerging technology and innovative minds that are bringing capabilities, data, and analytics to us as the insurance industry that we can build on top of. It's work we don't have to do because they've already spent millions and millions of dollars and hours and billions of dollars building that stuff. And what that gives us the ability to do is kind of reach into that rich mix of things and say, let's take a little bit of this from there and that from here and kind of twist it this way and that way. And all of a sudden, it gives us the ability to sense and interact with that world and the insured in new value-added ways that allow us to very quickly serve and or create new markets and or create amazing new value almost instantly. So I think, to me, that world of ecosystems is forming a next generation economy and a next generation paradigm for our world and our society. And I think the intelligent and innovative insurance companies are now and tech vendors like Majesco are starting to tap into those environments and say, how can we help pull those piece parts together? How can we help build platforms that those will work on? So you think about the internet, smartphone, Apple's, there's a platform or there's an app for that, or Amazon or Google. All those are examples of what happens when you start to basically bring those ecosystems and platforms together. And what they've demonstrated is the value of that ecosystem and platform and their ability to redefine industries and create new ones. And they don't just do that. They do more than just blur industry boundaries. They vaporize them. So think Uber, think Airbnb, think Amazon. So I think there's also studies out there that indicate, like in 10 years, 40 to 60% of the world's GNP is going to flow through those things. Insurance has to be a part of that. And, they need to reach in there and say, how can we leverage that to better serve and support our customers? So those capabilities and that methodology and thinking is creating new paradigms for every industry. And insurance is going to have the same thing happen to it. So the innovators that are exploring those, or even better, creating them, are the ones that are going to be creating a next generation of insurance and the rules by which it operates. And that's what gives you the edge in the world that's coming. So, we intend to kick off some of that work and visioning process as we launch our consortium next week. And, we're happy to have Majesco as a part of that. So there you go.
So, yeah. So one of the things that, we've talked about a lot over the last couple of years is really kind of these paths that insurers need to consider taking towards the future. And some of them have been kind of like stymied because they've been just overwhelmed with all of the change that's happening and all the options. And we've kind of talked about this view of moving to kind of the future of insurance, digital insurance 2.0. You and I've talked about, where it's really a new generation of customers and they have a different set of expectations. And with that, obviously we want to keep the current business running well because it's paying the bills. You want to optimize that, from a data and a distribution standpoint, embracing some of the new channels of direct, of some of the insurtechs that are out there that are working that, but also consider creating that new business model. And so as you kind of think about insurers, creating that vision and how do they survive and thrive through the paradigm shifts that you just talked about, what are you seeing, and what are you recommending to some of those insurers, Mike?
Yeah, so and again, I think we're on similar paths to this. I'm thinking back to my Apple days, and at the time I was the head of product management for the Apple II. And Steve came to me one day and basically said, I want you to stop selling that into the education marketplace because I'm going to put the Macintosh in there. And I looked at him and said, Steve, exactly what are we going to pay everybody's salaries by if we stop selling Apple IIs into that market? Because it's not going to work. So you may well displace my product in that marketplace when you bring the Macintosh, but in the meantime, that's our cash flow, and we need to have that. So I think insurance is in the same place. I think we have to move forward into the future, but at the same time, you can't just, try to rip and replace all the old stuff immediately. So I think it's kind of a dual strategy. But I do think that you have to basically begin the work, like not just talk about it, but begin the work of moving towards these new paradigms. And, I kind of think of this like back to, if you think about what Einstein did, in his theory of relativity, he kind of visioned himself on this beam of light and cast himself out into the universe on top of that and looked back to see what the universe looked like. Well, Steve, when we work with Steve, had this concept of kind of reverse engineering the future, which is think about what the world's going to look like following, emerging technology, Moore's law, and people's demand for more of that. What's that world going to look like? Then let's work back from there. The technology will follow. We'll be able to figure out how to do the rest, but the technology will follow. So I think, to me, keep the stuff in place that's paying the bills, and know that that's going to have to change as competition changes as well, but really start thinking about what this new world is going to look like. And I think the most important starting point for that is you have to move your thinking out of the existing paradigm, right? If you try to vision that future from the current paradigm, you're going to fail. And doing that isn't an easy process. It's a kind of a discipline, and you have to work through it. But you have to create a vision for an economy and a society that's going to be powered by digitally enabled services. So you go through some thought exercises, and I'll give you some simple ones here. So what if housing were a service and you had ownership in that, but it enabled you to move where you want, when you want, as your job or interest took you, and you could change your subscription level or live wherever you wanted. You could live in less expensive for housing for most part of the year, and then when winter came or summer came, more expensive places, and meals, transportations, even entertainment packages, laundry and upkeep and maintenance were all part of the housing plan. So when you start to think about that, and then you say, where does insurance fit in that? How do we sense that environment? How do we contribute value to that environment? Now you're kind of working backwards from a new paradigm. And it's not that that is necessarily something that's going to come about, but it begins to push you out of the current realm of your products and starts to focus on what's the world that's going to be and what are the goods and services and other stuff that we can bring to the market to do that. So, start by developing a few scenarios like that, and then ask the question, what are the ecosystem platforms and services that will enable and create value in those scenarios? And where does insurance and insurance ecosystem platforms and services play a part in that? How could they enable that? How could they buy into those? And then what's required from a strategy and infrastructure and a partnering perspective, or in business and product models to help achieve that. I think the net that I think about is how to think about what a hyper-connected world of ecosystem platforms and services will look like that increase our ability to achieve our life or business goals faster and less expensively and more effectively. What do those look like? And then how does insurance bind to those as a service or bind other services to it to help people achieve those goals. And then you can start to ask, okay, how do we get there? But you have to kind of define for your own company what the future is going to look like, what the role of insurance will be, and then how you as a company can create value within that future. So that's how I would start.
Well, that lines up exactly with how we're kind of seeing the whole thing, with kind of modernize your existing, optimize it, but you've really got to start creating that new. And I think what's really exciting, Mike, is over the course of the last 4 years, we saw creating all this new was really with some of the new insurtech, full stack insurers or MGAs. Now what we're seeing is we're seeing existing insurers stand up a new business unit, or stand up an innovation area that they're going to introduce new innovative products on a completely different platform, or stand up a new brand. And so we're seeing more activity from insurers and reinsurers that have very strong businesses, but are really beginning to experiment with that future and experiment with what's going to work and what's not going to work. And I think we're just on the cusp of seeing in the next year or two some real interesting products, some business models, some new ways of collaborating. And I think that's been the most exciting thing from SVIA, is the level of collaboration and partnership that you've been able to bring to the industry, of really bringing all different facets together in one place. And I think the consortium is going to be an interesting next phase of that, Mike. So, yeah. So one of the things I want to just kind of end with, Mike, is if you could pick one word or phrase to describe the future of insurance, what would that be?
Okay, let me take that on in just a second, because what I want to do is kind of put some urgency around what we've just talked about in terms of moving your thinking into an ecosystem and platform world. I want you to think about the work that Amazon is doing all over the world in different places to start to be a part of the insurance industry, and some of the recent moves they've made with Berkshire Hathaway and others. So when you think about how they intersect with the world, the multiple ecosystems they intersect with, and the amazing data and analytic platforms they have, coupled with insurance knowledge, that's going to bring a radical change. AXA is doing work over in Europe now with putting together a platform with major banking institutions where they're going to start to develop blended products and services. Allstate, I think several years ago, launched an initiative here for small commercial insurance where they're really kind of bringing together a plethora of services under an umbrella that small businesses can opt into. So the work that we're talking about is already started, and it's not just somebody sitting here hypothesizing about the future of the industry. That work is already underway. Go ahead, Denise.
Yep, that's true. And what I was going to add to that, Mike, is that in the strategic priorities research, but also most importantly in our recent consumer and small medium business research, we asked the question about the big techs, whether or not consumers and small medium business owners would be open to purchasing insurance from those. What was interesting is there was a range of anywhere between 58 to 78% of the millennials and Gen Zs that definitely would buy insurance from not just Apple, not just Amazon, but also Google and also Netflix, because there is a level of value and loyalty to those companies because they're offering more than just the individual service that they started out with. They're providing a community of access to a lot of different things. And so I think one of the interesting things there is really about the value and loyalty that these platform companies, like these big tech companies, have really been able to create because of the simple customer engagement process and the access to the things that they need on demand at the point in time that they need it. And I think that's the real opportunity for insurance, is to be able to create that type of platform business to be able to do the same.
Totally agree. And my other caution would be to the small to medium carriers and even brokers who don't feel like they have the ability to do that. And this is why you need to collaborate, because I guarantee you the largest are, right? And the impact that's going to have on the market is going to be huge. So I think there is an opportunity for the small to medium carriers to basically join together and start to do that work on their own, so they're not left behind. Either that, or they'll be left to be gobbled up by those that have done it and see some value in either the customer base that they have or something like that. But I think in general, it's like, don't wait, right? Because it's happening.
Yep.
All right.
Exactly.
So back to your, go ahead.
Back to my question, your one word about the future of insurance. What would that be, Mike?
Well, my one word would be hyper-connected. If I could give a phrase, it would be customer-centric, hyper-connected services.
Awesome. I think that's a perfect way to end this. And Mike, I'm looking forward to the partnership that we've developed with you, both personally and with Majesco, continue to move this industry forward, because I just see a lot of opportunity ahead for those that have the courage and have the persistence to make things happen, and be open to change and be open to failure, because you're going to fail a few times until you find that success.
Yeah,
Steve Jobs taught us that well.
Welcome
Absolutely.
to
Welcome to innovation.
Well, I just want to put a cap on that as well. So now I can't remember who did the study, but basically it was about boldness, right? And what they're showing is the insurance carriers who are making those moves are making bold moves, are starting to return real financial results and real market share gains because of that work. So again, this is not just like, hey, we ought to do it because everybody else is. There's gold in those hills.
Absolutely. Well, once again, thanks, Mike, for your time today, and we look forward to our continued work together on moving the industry forward to the future of insurance. Thank you.
Thank you.